Hello. Woo. Good morning. If you can hear my voice, I'll have you sit down. Grab a seat. If we need more seats, it looks like they're getting added over there. Get friendly with your neighbor. Zach needs some friends if you'd like to sit up front. Well, my name is Whitney. I am one of the leaders here at Hub City, and I'm happy to see you here this morning. I have a few things to tell you about before we get started. The first one, and most exciting in my opinion, is that this coming weekend is the Women's Retreat. Yeah. It is at Camp Tadmore, as always, from Friday night to Sunday. If you use this QR code, you can sign up and register to go, if you haven't already. The registration will close tomorrow night at midnight, so you have this day and tomorrow left to register. It's $125 to register for the whole weekend. If that is a burden for you and would prevent you from being able to come, please let me know. And we have some scholarships available for that, so don't let that be a reason that you wouldn't attend. What else about the Women's Retreat? I think that's everything. Next up is the Fish Food Drive. Yes, Fish is one of our partners here at Hub City, our nonprofit partners, and they are doing a food drive. So this is a way that we can come alongside them and support them in what they're doing to restore Albany. The food drive is on Saturday the 18th from 10 to 2. It's a window of time where they will be collecting at various locations throughout the city. We have a blue tub kind of by Roselle over there on the ground. Thank you. That blue tub. If you aren't able to bring food donations during that time window, anytime between now and then, you can bring them and leave them in that box, and we'll make sure that they get donated at the right time. So this is specifically non-perishable foods. Please don't bring anything that is going to rot in the box. That would be gross. So that box will be there. We appreciate you supporting our nonprofit partner. Speaking of, we have another one, Andando. They have their auction and gala coming up on October. This is the different thing. This year, the auction is all online and before the event. So if you've gone in years past, the dinner has been part of the auction as well. This is just the dinner on the 23rd from 7 to 9 p.m. If you'd like tickets to go to the dinner, this QR code will get you to that page to be able to purchase those. And the online auction will happen the days prior. So it closes before the gala, remember that. And it looks like the RSVP is before October 8th. We have some printout information on the back table, also by Roselle. She's like our Vanna White this morning. All of the things about our partnerships are on that back table. So if you haven't noticed that, that's where you'll find all your info. And then I also heard from Rita this morning that there are some flyers and information about our third partner, Jackson Street, on that table as well. They've got some fundraisers coming up, and they're looking for cold weather items to help support their shelter individuals. So there's that as well. And I feel like I'm forgetting something else. Oh, thank you. Tonight, I knew there was something. Andrea's got my back. Youth group tonight. This will be, they did their kickoff last week on Sunday. This will be from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Campbell's house. You can use this QR code to get information and sign up on the Church Center app so that you get all of the information moving forward. So if you have a middle schooler or a high schooler, this is an opportunity for them to get involved and be a part of the youth group at our church. Okay, would you all stand with me? I am going to read from Matthew 26, verse 31 through 56. It's a big chunk, so hang on tight. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter answered him, "Though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter said to him, "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." And all the disciples said the same. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to the disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And taking with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So, could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again, for the 2nd time, he went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass until I drink it, your will be done." And again, he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So, leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the 3rd time, saying the same words again. And then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." While he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Seize him." And he came up to Jesus at once and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and he kissed him. Then they came up and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hands and drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then should the scriptures be fulfilled, that it must be so?" At that hour, Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out against a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place, that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples left him and fled. Would you pray with me? Father God, your word is holy and good, and I thank you that we have it to be able to come here on Sunday mornings and learn and grow together as a church community. Your great sacrifice is bigger than we can understand, and would we just sit at your feet in awe of what you came to do and did for us, and would we live our lives as a reflection of your great mercy. God, we love you and praise you. Amen.
Maybe seated. Good morning, Hub City. Good to see everybody. Heavy passage today, right? The last couple weeks we've been deep in what we call Holy Week, Passion Week of Jesus, his last week on earth as fully human. And he's, as you can see behind me, this wonderful painting, the cross for him is where he's headed. And we're getting the play-by-play of what is happening up to that. And I don't know about you, but it's whenever you hear something over and over and over again, and obviously it's the cross, Jesus' crucifixion is such a main focus on the gospel message. But it still is sobering to just kind of read it as a narrative, isn't it? It's still just, of all the just narratives you could read, of all the people that deserve what is going to happen to Jesus, it should shock you. It's supposed to be a front to what we think is right. And it's beautiful, I think, to see Jesus, and you'll see him today, in his human nature, as fully God, and how he deals with what is coming up and how he leads his followers into that. But to kind of recap a little bit of where we are, just to get into the current situation of today's passage. He's kind of come, there's a little hill right outside of Jerusalem called the Mount of Olives. And that's where he had his Olivet Discourse, where he did a lot of teaching and this kind of stuff. And then they went to Bethany, and he was anointed by Mary, if you remember that. And then they went into Jerusalem, and now they're back out to the Mount of Olives. So he's kind of done this little bit of a track race here. If you remember last Sunday, Jesus, right before our passage today, he had this Last Supper with his followers, and he had monumentally changed what Passover meant. If you remember this, that when they sat down to have the Passover meal, which Passover again was the holiday, and they were to have the Seder meal and to remember what God did and how he saved his people and brought them out of Egypt, brought them into the land, and he says all that stuff, the salvation, the bread from in the desert, all that stuff, that was all supposed to point you to me. That now, actually, I have always been, and now it is my body and it is my blood that is the new covenant if you're going to move forward in relationship with God. Which is, again, for a first century Jew, is wild. Because it's like taking a long standing tradition and saying that whole thing that you people have been doing is me, and now forevermore will be centered in me. So he changed communion forever. Changed it, absolutely, just monumentally changed it. Centered around his body, his blood, as a new covenant. And then we were given insight by the author Matthew that says the one who was to betray him, his very own disciple Judas, left and will hand him over to the officials. So we're coming fresh off of that. Okay, and if you missed that sermon, you can go look at it or just go read it in your scriptures. But we're fresh off of that. It's heavy, it's crazy, okay? So, chapter 26, verse 31. So Jesus, fresh off of that, says, then he said to him, you will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. I feel like the bad news just continues, right? There's just kind of like, hey, by the way, you're all going to fall away from me. First, one of you will betray me, and they're all like, is it I, is it I, is it I? It says, but you're all going to abandon me. And then he has this curious quote. I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. This is from the prophet Zechariah. I know you've memorized the prophet Zechariah's stuff, but just to give context, Zechariah 13, okay? Zechariah the prophet is talking about, and God speaking through him, focusing on a day of the Lord, a future time of judgment and cleansing of Israel, which includes this like cleansing of sin and uncleanness, but it's by the removal of idol worship and false prophecy, okay? So a lot of times in Old Testament history, and that it would be like actual, you could see the idol, it'd be an Asherah pole, or it'd be something that they could go and remove those things, right? But as Jesus has been teaching, you start to realize all that stuff that was physical in the Old Testament was always supposed to be a representation of what's happening in the hearts of people. So when Prophet Ezekiel says, hey, you do all these practices that look like you're following me, but your hearts are not for me. That is exactly what Jesus has come to call out of the religious leaders. You're looking like you're doing all this stuff, but I'm actually come to cleanse the impurity within you. So this is back to Zechariah. He says, however, there will be a time, a sharp contrast then to when we strike the shepherd and all of you will scatter, but there will be a remnant that would come back and be refined. This is Zechariah 13. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. I will turn my hand against the little ones. In the whole land, declares the Lord, 2/3 shall be cut off and perish, and 1/3 shall be left alive. And I will put this third into the fire and refine them as one refines silver and test them as gold is tested. They will call upon my name and I will answer them and I will say, they are my people. And they will say, the Lord is my God. That's encouraging for that 1/3, right? But a majority of them will fall away. This is the prophecy of the coming Messiah so long ago, and Jesus says this will happen tonight. Before the night is finished, this will come to pass. But he follows it with verse 32. It says, but after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee. Do you guys remember where all of this started? Where most of the disciples are from? Right? Back to their home. Jesus again reminds them, though death is coming, I will rise again. We will be reunited in Galilee where this all began. Jesus, it's like he knows that once things go south, they're going to turn and go to what they know best, and that's to go back to fishing. That's to go back to home. That's to go back to what's familiar. What would they do without their rabbi? But of course, we love Peter, right? Peter pipes up. Peter answers him, though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away. Classic Peter. All right, he immediately, not only does he speak up, but he separates himself from the group. Like, these posers, I don't know about them, but I would never fall away from you. No way. Jesus looks at him specifically. I tell you, this very night before the rooster crows, he's told them all they'll abandon him, but he says, you will deny me 3 times. Peter, of course, is like, even if I must die with you, I will not deny you. And all the disciples said the same. Right? To abandon them is its own horrific thing, right? But then to say, and you will even deny that you know me. Like, think about, it's hard to picture this whole day together, but picture this entire day. If you look in the scriptures, kind of within this 24-hour period, the same day included Passover. So they had found the boy with the water jug. If you remember that, he says, go into the city and you'll find that, and then he'll take you to the master's house who will prepare the Passover meal, right? So they found that, they followed, they had the Seder meal, the whole meal, which was pretty intense, and Jesus changed a lot of language. They sung a hymn. They were now outside the city during evening. And if you remember, a Jewish day is sundown to sundown. Okay, so it's different. Your day actually starts in the evening. Okay, so whatever we do at night, that's like what they would do in the morning, if that makes sense. So, whatever, it doesn't matter. So a Jewish day, sundown to sundown. So the day of Jesus' betrayal, trial, and crucifixion has already begun. We're in that day, okay? We're in that day. And apparently, this is news to me, in ancient Palestine, it was common for the rooster to crow deep into the night. They say anywhere from midnight to 2 a.m. Who's a fan of that? Nobody. Even before first light, Jesus says they will all fall away, and Peter specifically will deny him not once, not twice, but thrice. Anything in threes in Hebrew culture is definite, fully complete. We've seen that in the Gospel of Matthew. We've seen that in the Hebrew Scriptures. Like, the threes are just supposed to be this, it's complete. It's a full denial. Jesus says, Peter, trust me, you won't be able to handle what's coming next. You think your bravado, you think your courage, you think your willpower will be enough, and it won't be. Do you guys ever get caught in that? Not us. The other churches, right? Like, I can do it. No way, Jesus. No, nothing could tempt me beyond whatever, That's like prime enemy fodder, right? Like, great, they're confident. I love that. There's a Proverbs 16:18, I'm sure you've heard. Pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. This is like Peter to a T, right? It's like, no way, Jesus, would I do this? So Jesus, he goes to a garden, Gethsemane. So what do you guys do before a big moment in your life? Do you blast some really good music, some rock music? Do you need it totally quiet? Do you pound some candy? Like, I don't know what you guys do. I typically take like a quick nap. Like, I have a lot of empathy for what's coming next, but I just have to just shut down. I call it my cave. My wife knows. I put like 3 pillows kind of right here. I leave a little breathing hole, but I just have to like, yeah, don't worry, I don't. But I have to. My dog's, it's crazy. It's good. But I usually take a quick nap. Verse 36, Jesus knows what's coming, okay? It says, then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, sit here while I go over there and pray. This is what Jesus does. Okay, he knows what's coming. He knows what's the cup that is his, right? And he says, I'm going to go pray. I'm going to go pray in silence. Gethsemane is a place that the word means olive press. So it's kind of a garden. It's on the lower slopes of the Mount of Olives. It's filled with these ancient olive trees, and people would go, and it's where they also would have pressing stations and crushing stations to get olive oil out of the olives. So it's wild because it's a fitting place for one who is about to be crushed for our iniquities, right? To be in a place where olive is literally squeezed to a point where everything is pulled out of it. To paint an even bigger, more visceral picture, to get to the Garden of Gethsemane from where they were at, they traveled just east of the Temple Mount, and you can go look at pictures of recreations of what it looked like. They had to pass the ravine of the brook Kidron. The brook Kidron was this like shallow flow of water coming from the temple out into the valley Kidron. Okay, so this little flow of water. And guess what that flow of water from the temple into the valley Kidron was used for? Well, close. All the animal sacrifices. All the blood, all the entrails, all the stuff was washed down so they could cleanse the temple. That makes sense, right? It actually is brilliant for them to have a way to cleanse the temple. But it goes down. They had to cross the brook Kidron. Remember what time of the year it was? Passover? This very night is when the lambs were slaughtered. River running blood red. They're crossing over streams of just blood, going to a place where they crush things to get everything possibly. The visceral picture of what Jesus, knowing what he's going to do, the disciples are kind of unsure yet, but he's walking and he's noticing everything that's happening. Verse 37, so after crossing over and taking with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. So only Peter, James, and John got to witness this moment. And remember, do you remember the only other time that Peter, James, and John got to witness Jesus? Something very specific, up on a mountain. Transfiguration, right? You just point up, yeah. The transfiguration, right? What did they witness? These 3 men. They witnessed Jesus in his heavenly glory on earth, completely. Remember, he was transfigured before them. He even talked to Moses and Elijah. How insane, right? And then right here, like our English is kind of rough. They get to see him like sorrowful and troubled is like rock bottom. Like racked with sobs and shaking. They see him at his earthly rock bottom. If the transfiguration on the top of the mount was to show Jesus' deity, the sorrow at the bottom of the mount was his humanity. This is fully God and fully human. When you read in scriptures that says Jesus, we have a high priest who is able to be empathetic with you because he's experienced the breadth of human emotion. This is what we're talking about. Like ascendant to full deity and just absolutely crushed. Absolutely crushed. Jesus said to them, my soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me. And going a little farther, he fell on his face and he prayed, saying, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Sorrowful even to death. Like that phrase, I tried to look it up in the Greek, and it's like the English just can't even have the words for like that. Like many of us have been sorrowful. Many of us have maybe even been to the point where you would say, I just feel like my life is over, right? Maybe you get a picture of this, and he just says, I'm to the point of death. Luke's gospel adds some details to this in the same moment. He says, and being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. There's an actual process for this. Being in such great distress, you're literally seeping blood in your sweat. It's called hematohydrosis. You guys know that. Hema means blood, hydrosis means sweat, right? It's extremely rare. It's very real. There's actually people today that can't have it. But the thing that happens, the stress is so great that the capillaries near all the sweat glands actually burst. So the blood gets into the sweat glands and seeps out. So it's blood mixed with sweat, this kind of thing, right? So obviously he was sweaty, obviously just that kind of thing, but then so sorrowful, very painful. Jesus gives us some insight of why he's so sorrowful. He calls it the cup. The cup has long been a biblical symbol for what God has proportioned out for his people. Sometimes it can be great blessing. This is the cup, the king's cup, great blessing. You get to share in this with them, but a lot of times it's used for suffering. In Jesus' case, he's talking about suffering. And there's two things, two sufferings Jesus has in mind. There's the physical pain, and with that comes the emotions and the mental and all that, right? But the physical pain, crucifixion is no picnic, right? The Romans literally designed, they created crucifixion based on how much pain a human body could take without actually dying, and then to suffocate to death as a human spectacle. Like they want to keep you alive just enough so that you actually die on the cross while people can watch you. Right? It was made for just the vilest of people, and it was probably made by the vilest of people. So Jesus, of course, like he's not looking forward to that. Who would? Right? But then there's the spiritual pain on side of that. Jesus was going to take all human sin and rebellion against God, literally becoming sin himself in order to face the full-on wrath of the Father. The scriptures tell us, for our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Like the gravity of that, for him to say, I'm going to take, like the physical pain is going to be brutal, right? And I'm going to die. But the pain of not all of a sudden the Father's Spirit, the Father's love, Father's presence to be that turned around, and it's the wrath of the Father. Completely on him. But it's their plan, right? That's why I love it. He has this conversation with the Father saying, is there any other way, Dad? Is there any other way? Jesus knows what's at stake, so he's not unloving to try to see another way. I don't blame him for seeking the Father in prayer during the hardest time in his life, asking for some reprieve. We do that, right? We should. Like that is where we need to go. But Jesus models what we usually go through ourselves at rock bottom moments. God, please help me. Make it stop. I need you to be here with me. I feel so lost. I need to feel your presence. I feel like death is right here. Again, Luke's gospel gives us some cool insights. When he's praying, when he has his face on the ground, praying to the Father, Luke 22 says, and there appeared to him an angel from heaven strengthening him. Love that, right? And there was an answer, but not a passing of the cup. Instead of a cosmic, you don't have to do this, it's a, I am here with you. I am here with you in this, my son. And this is key. There's one thing for Jesus to say, hey, can this cup pass from me? But after Jesus gives his request, he gives his resolve. He says, nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. If there was one verse to memorize or tattoo on something, whatever, like this is it, right? powerful mentality. No matter what your request is, to say like, nevertheless, however you answer, it is your will to be done, not mine. No matter what happens. Can we say that in our lives? Can we say we get up in the morning and be like, all right, God, I know I'm going to break down. I know I'm going to sin today. I'm not whatever. But today, your will be done. No matter if nothing else is good in my life, the rest of my life, I don't feel another blessing or another whatever. Your will be done. That's a hard prayer. That's a tough one. Because what we assume when we say your will be done is that your will is going to be really great for me. It's going to be awesome. That's the God of self-help. And that's not the God of the Scriptures, right? The God of the Scriptures does have good plans for you. Does have beautiful, you can trust him and it is good. But it doesn't mean it's going to be always easy. Jesus is at his lowest physically, emotionally, mentally, but at least he has his close buddies, right? At least he has his best friends. So he's like, oh, I got to go back. I got to talk to them, right? So let's see how his close friends are just vigilantly standing there waiting. Oh, he came to his disciples and found them sleeping. Great. He said to Peter, okay, well, like, you just told me that you would never deny me, and even if you had to die, you would be with me, and you couldn't stay awake. Awesome, right? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. That phrase, stay awake or be alert. It's funny to hear Jesus say this because actually in the last couple teachings throughout the Olivet Discourse, this is what he was focusing on. Right? In Matthew 24, he's telling about the signs of the end times, and he says, therefore, stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. Further, in Matthew 24, he says, but understand this. He gives the parable of the owner of the house and the thief in the night. If the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have been on the alert and would not have allowed his house to be broken into. In the parable of the virgins, when he says, hey, I just told you this parable where all of them are in, but some are prepared and some weren't. He says, therefore, stay alert, because you know neither the day nor the hour. He's been telling them, stay awake, be awake, don't fall asleep to your life. After all I've taught you, you couldn't even do it for 1 hour. I've been teaching you this. Don't become apathetic. Don't stop living intentionally, seeking God's will, being alert, watching and praying, trying to see what God is doing. But here's what happens, even if you desire that and you want that, here's what happens a lot of the time. And I think the NIV Expositor's commentary has a good line for this. It says, spiritual eagerness is often accompanied by carnal weakness. You guys find that to be true? So oftentimes I desire so badly to follow God are also the hardest times. And also the times where instantly I just feel like, oh, I just don't want to. There's so many other things I want to do. There's so many fleshly desires I'd rather do that would be way more easier. Often the hardest temptations come when we think we're safest, when we think we've covered all our bases and are secure. And then we fail, right? We fail and something happens and then we think, but this whole thing doesn't work, so you throw the whole thing out. You're like, well, then God doesn't work. Maybe it does. And Jesus is teaching us, even now in his lowly state, that in order to stay in step with what God is doing, to be alert, stay awake, watch and pray, be intentional. And push past the hardships when the temptations come. Trust in me. 42, it says, again, for the second time he went away and prayed, my Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done. And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words again. Again, there's the three, right? Jesus prayed 3 times for the cup to be removed. A full request. Full request, God, this is it. This is the last time. If you can remove this cup, please do so. But he also prayed 3 times, nevertheless, your will be done. So complete request and complete resolve. Just say, nevertheless, I will trust in you. Verse 45, then he came to the disciples and said to them, sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. So this is it. This is the moment. Peter, James, and John kind of rub the sleepies out of their eyes, and they wake up, and no longer are they in a prayer garden, but it's like kind of a West Side Story under the overpass kind of idea, right? Like the sharks have shown up and the jets are ready, if anyone's with me, right? Remember, the disciples don't know yet that Judas is the betrayer. Remember, they just got off of dinner and they're like, is it I, Lord? Is it I, Lord? Is it I, Lord? They don't yet know. They might be convinced it's still one of them. So when Jesus says, look up, check it out, my betrayer is here, and they look up, and who is the last person do they expect to see? And I think Matthew told us in the scriptures Judas who would betray Jesus, but if he didn't tell us, like we also look in the story, like wouldn't have known, right? Verse 47, while he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. I would imagine there's a little bit of confusion on the disciples' part. It's like, Judas, what? Like, look out. There's people behind you with clubs, like, come over here, buddy. It's kind of like Red Rover style. Verse 48, now the betrayer had given them a sign saying, the one I will kiss is the man, seize him. And he came up to Jesus at once and said, greetings, Rabbi. And he kissed him. Jesus said to him, friend, do what you came to do. Like such a wildly intimate betrayal. Like Judas didn't have to be there. He was already paid. He could have just told these soldiers where Jesus probably would have been, and yet he chose to be there and not only point out, there's the guy, get him. He chooses an act of closeness, of familiarity with the one he is betraying. A kiss wasn't all that weird, especially in Hebrew culture, but the circumstance of it makes it so viscerally vile. Judas probably didn't very much, or probably did very much love Jesus as a human and teacher, but he just rejected him as the Messiah, right? But Jesus' response is brutally gracious, looking at Judas in the eyes, saying, friend, do what you came to do. Would you call your enemies friends? Would you call your betrayer friends? Jesus' grace to his betrayer is tough to stomach, but important to see the consistency of Jesus' character here on earth. He knows what he came to do. Once Judas gives the signal, the soldiers take action. Then they came up and they laid hands on Jesus and seized him. But behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand, drew his sword, and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, put your sword back in its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that it must be so? Matthew is super kind in not naming Peter here, right? We all know it was Peter. Like, you could just hear this story out of anywhere. It was Peter. Like, someone took a sword and cut someone's ear. It was Peter, right? Maybe Simon the Zealot, you could think maybe he's going back to his old ways, right? But Peter has this, like, unquenchable thirst for brashness toward defending Jesus. Have you ever wondered why he didn't go for Judas? If this was a Hollywood film, like, he would have gone right after Judas, right? He struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. So a couple of things real quick. If he would have attacked a Roman soldier, right, he certainly would have been killed right away, imprisoned, or most likely crucified of being an enemy of the state. The servant of the high priest was there, which means servant of Caiaphas. Remember him. Caiaphas couldn't implicate himself in this action, even though we know he orchestrated this. But he still sent his servant, which we know his name is Malchus, to make sure it was done and to authenticate Judas's claim that this was in fact Judas, or Jesus. They didn't want to make sure Judas wasn't just playing them or faking who it was. The irony is that Peter couldn't have stayed awake for 1 hour, but he was the quickest to a sword, flinging it around, right? Jesus chastises Peter about his violence and reminds him that if he really were to desire a fight, this would not be a contest. For reference, a legion is around 6,000 foot soldiers and 700 cavalry. And how many did Jesus say was ready? More than 12. Okay, I'm no Einstein. I think that's like over 80,000, right? Of infantry, heavenly soldiers, to be able to just like at the ready go down. That's like Aragorn with the dead army situation in the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, come on, it's amazing. I imagine after this, like Jesus looks at him and says, "Put that little pointer away. Like you don't realize I had all like Peter looks at his pocket knife with a different perspective." Right, Jesus has no reason to heal the man's ear, but Luke tells us he does it anyways because it's who Jesus is. He's a healer, he's a savior, he's one who restores. Verse 55, at that hour Jesus said to the crowds, have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me, but all this has taken place that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. He says, I don't know who you think I am. I don't know what war you think I'm starting. You know who I am. You've heard my teachings. I have not hid from you, and I am not hiding from you now. This is what I think is the crux of this moment. Jesus says, you aren't taking me against my will. I am laying my life down willingly. I was betrayed, but I am giving myself. I'm laying my life down because the scriptures must be fulfilled. My Father did not take this cup from me, so I will see it through. Remember, Jesus is the Word made flesh, as John tells us. So not only is he fulfilling what was written, he's also fulfilling what he's spoken. And as we read earlier that night, he spoke this word. He said, you will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. So we're left with the chilling fulfillment of that. In 26:56, then all the disciples left him and fled. Right, this is a hard passage to end on a high note. Like, this is just one of those moments where, like, we just have to sit in the gravity of the last week of Jesus' life. Like, this is brutal. Any narrative, just even in literature, this is brutal. But especially to be like, this is our Messiah. This is Jesus who did no wrong, and this is what was happening to him. But I just want to end quickly on what Jesus did for us. In John's gospel, he gives us a simple picture of what he's come to do. Jesus says, an analogy, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And then later, John writes in a letter to Christians after Jesus' death and resurrection, so many years later, he says, by this we know love, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. Right? We are watching Jesus define love. He always has, but especially in these 3 years of ministry, in this last week of his life, he is defining God's love for his people. For anyone who believes and confesses that Jesus is Lord, he says, I have laid my life down for you willingly. This confession and belief that many of us have will play out in then how we love one another. And it'll be based on Christ first loving us. We only love because Christ first loved us. Christ's love for us, it culminates on the cross and in his resurrection, but it has always been there, and we see it even now. Jesus' love for his people when he gives himself willingly to the people. The good shepherd is taken and soon will be stricken, and the sheep will fall away, and this is true. But it's not about the ones who fall away, it's the ones who come back. Remember, the remnant. I think this is why he quoted Zechariah. He wanted to prove a point and say, yes, there's many that will fall away, but remember, there were some that remained. There were some that came back, and they were refined with fire. The story's not over. Like, we know what is coming. We know what our hope is to hold on to, the resurrection of Christ and new life of that. But we pause today to sit in the brutal reality of what Jesus went through for you and I, how he willingly laid down his life in love. And when we respond today to God and remember our Savior's willingness to have his body broken and spill his blood for us, remembering that the Kidron Brook running and the olive press crushing the olive. We pause to worship his willingness. Let us remember with worship his self-sacrificial and unconditional love for those who love Christ. Let us remember that he who knew no sin became sin for you and me so that we could stand in righteousness. Not perfect, and that's the point, because it's the blood of Jesus. It's his love that covers us when we come to him. So when we respond today in singing and prayer and coming to the tables to receive communion, remembering Jesus' love, that we love only because of him first laying his life down for us. Let me pray for us, and let's go to the tables.